Hello, everyone, and welcome to Book Talk with Kara. Today, I am delighted to have Sarah Monzon with us, and we are going to talk about her new book, An Overdue Match. And first off, I love the cover. It is this gorgeous image in a library. But before we dive into all the fun that is this book, do you want to take just a moment to introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm Sarah Monzon. I am a mom. I've got two kids. My husband is a chaplain in the Navy, so I'm a military spouse, which means we move around a lot, and that's could be fun. So I don't really sound like from anywhere, although I was born in Florida, but we move around, and it's just kind of fun exploring the different states and things like that.
I love that. What's the most interesting place that you've lived so far?
So we haven't actually, we've done two tours in Washington and two in California. So
Okay.
like at different places, but I prefer Washington over California. We were supposed to go to Italy, but that fell through.
Oh, I love Italy. Maybe I hope that happens for you sometime soon because Italy's amazing. But someday that'll happen. But we are going to talk about an overdue match. And this is, I'm going to call it a love story to books because it really does start all with the heroine like going on and on about this person who's checked out a book and is just like desecrating it because he's dog-eared like 70% of the pages and she is determined to figure out who that is. And I think any good reader can relate to that. Like, no, you can't do that. You have to care for and love the books. So, which came first for you? The library or the librarian? The book or the idea or the heroine?
It was the heroine. Yeah. I wanted to write a book about a character that had alopecia. And so the story kind of spiraled from that.
How did you come up with that as the hook? Because I don't know that a lot of people are familiar with that, but she essentially, over the course of a illness, loses all of her hair and has to deal with that. So why did that spark this? Ooh, I have to write a heroine who's dealing with this.
My mom has alopecia.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's been a journey for her. She started with, so there's three different types of alopecia. There's alopecia areata, which is spot balding, so you lose your hair in the spots. And that's how it started for her when she was a teenager. And those she would lose spots and they would grow back and she'd lose them and then grow back. And then there's alopecia totalis, and that's where you lose all the hair on your head. And then there's alopecia universalis, which is you lose all the hair all over your body. And that's what the heroine has, Evangeline. She has no hair. So no hair, no eyebrows, no eyelashes, like nothing. And that's where my mom is at now. So I've always wanted to write a book, not for her, but like representing the alopecia, because she just representation is just so important. Like I know when Barbie came out and there's now a Barbie with no hair, she was so excited. She's like 50 something years old and she's buying all these bald Barbies for all of her granddaughters because she was like, look, it's like for me, and there just doesn't seem to be that representation in fiction so much. And so I wanted to write one.
I love that. And I think you're right. I think we're all becoming more aware of how much that representation really makes a difference. One of the times it really started clicking for me was watching some of the behind the scenes with Black Panther
Mm-hmm.
and just watching some of the kids talking about seeing this superhero who looked like them. And I loved it for the story and the acting and all of that. And I wasn't really thinking about who was on screen. But then
Mm-hmm.
hearing these kids talk about it with such excitement, I was like, it started clicking. And
Right.
over and over and over again in the last few years, we've seen that. And so for you to talk about that with your mom and the heroine's journey, and just even it shows up in some of the scenes, like when she's talking about getting a wig and like having to walk into the store. And I never even thought about that. I'm like, a wig's a wig's a wig, but it's not at all. And so,
So many different types of ways.
yeah, and I'd never thought about that because I've never been with someone who's had to go through those decisions and had to think about it. I was like, oh my gosh, that would be so overwhelming. And so to now have thought through that, I was like, wow, there's so much more to it. But this is also, I mean, there's a love story. So there's so much to this. It's fun. I mean, this is a romance. There's a comedy. There's a lot of funny things happening. Uh, so what are you hoping that readers are going to take from this novel?
Well, I think any author off the bat just wants the readers to have a good time reading it. So hopefully they just have a few enjoyable hours. But beyond that, like what you're saying is you never even considered some of those things, and I think that's a really big thing about fiction is it kind of opens you up your perspective to things that you never really considered before. And I think it really lends to having empathy grow for characters that are representation of people in real life, and so that empathy can extend to people that you meet. uh, and I hope hopefully people will have a good time, will have some laughs, but then they'll also be able to sit with just how they interact with people that are not necessarily just like us.
Well, and I don't know. And I even put in the questions that I sent to you, like, maybe I'm imagining this. You've got this heroine who's dealing with this um, autoimmune disease. And then you've got the hero who's very creative and he's got all these tattoos. And sometimes that can lead to being misunderstood and misinterpreted. And is that something that you're really trying to help people think through? Is that, don't take people on the surface, look past that, because it's so easy to do where we just kind of stop and we're like, okay, this is the person. Everything is just what I see. And that's where it ends. That's where it stops.
It's
Or am I
Yeah.
overthinking it?
No, well, I mean, it's really easy to, we always say don't judge a book by its cover, but it's really easy to do that. You kind of, especially if we're raised in a certain type of culture,
Mhm.
um, and so we have all those preconceived things that we've heard growing up. So we kind of carry that along with us. But we can think through all of that and come up with our own ideas as well. But yeah, I think everyone kind of struggles a little bit with some self-esteem. There's a lot of self-esteem struggles in this book that she deals with, just because she's heard things and internalized them for so long, and that's a lot of her journey is going through that. And I think anybody, whether they have a physical difference or not, can relate to that.
Yeah, I think no matter who we are, we all have those moments, if not days and weeks, where self-esteem is such a big issue for us. So, thinking about your writing journey, which book number is this for you?
Oh, I don't. I should know this off the top of my head. Like, I don't. It's like 19, 20, anywhere between 18 and 20, somewhere around there.
Yeah, so you've been writing for a while. What was your writing journey like? How did did you wake up one day and be like, oh, I'm going to be a writer? Or was it something you've always wanted to do? How did you first discover that, oh, I am a writer at heart?
I even when I was really young, like to pen short stories and little things like that. I always loved creative writing in school. When I was a teenager, I wrote a lot of poetry. I started writing my first like novel when I was a student missionary in China. I had some free times like in the evenings because there was a lot of people who spoke English around me. So I'm always like in my own world. I narrate everything in my head anyway. Like just going through the day is like a book for me. Like this, yeah. Anyway, so it's always been there, just always in part of who I am. And then I just kept writing. Um, I think when my first child was really young, I really like brought it back to the forefront, like trying to make it more of a priority because I felt like I was just kind of like losing myself in motherhood. Like everything was about him, and so I needed something that was kind of balanced that and was more for me too. And it just kind of I just kept with it from there.
I love that. So, what's your biggest challenge as a writer? Some of us are pantsers, some of us are plotters, some of us are in the middle. Is it coming up with the characters, coming up with the plot, sticking with it to the end? What's the biggest like challenge for you?
Um, my biggest challenge is probably just like self-doubt. Uh, like I'll write and I'll think the story is stupid or dumb, or like I'll read a really good book and I'll be like, oh, I'll never be as good of a writer as they are.
Yeah,
Or, I'll read a bad review and take that a little bit too much to heart. So
yeah.
I think just the self-doubt part of like, is it any good, is the hardest thing for me.
So when you hit one of those moments, how do you work your way out of it? Because we all have those, whether we're writers or not. We know we can all get stuck in those like vortexes of, oh my gosh, I'm an imposter. They're going to figure it out. I mean, I still get that way where I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, they just gave me a contract. They're going to figure out I'm not going to be able to do it this time. What do you do when you get stuck in one of those?
Sometimes I just butt in chair and just keep going, plowing through it anyway, because I know that it happens every single time. So you just kind of have to ignore it. Sometimes I whine to my critique partner, and she's like, "Stop being stupid. You're not like, don't listen to that voice.
Yeah.
Your books are great," and that kind of pumps me up a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, and there is a certain point, where now when that happens, I'm like, okay, this happens at this point in every book that
Yeah,
I've ever written. And it is that button chair, just keep moving. It's gonna
yeah,
get better, or I'll write past it. But it is funny how there are just these moments where, and sometimes they are almost cyclical. Like I have to start writing a book and I'm just like dreading it. And then I also have to write a proposal and I'm dreading it because
yeah.
they're just those self-doubt moments. And now it's like, okay, deadline's coming, must do it. And so you just have to,
Right. You would think that after so many times, things would be easier, and you would think, "Oh, I've done 15 books. This is a breeze."
yeah,
But every time you open a document, you're like, "Can I really write 80,000 words?" Like,
yeah. Why won't it get harder? Because I've already done it and I'm out of good ideas. All the good ideas are gone. Instead of, oh, I've done it X number of times. I know I can do this. It's just funny
right.
how our minds do that. So, what's a significant way that an overdue match changed from the first draft to what readers are going to experience?
You know, I write pretty clean first drafts, so there's never huge changes. The the main change from what I submitted to the editors to what the readers have is Evangeline and Ty, they strike a bargain in the book. So Ty is very interested in Evangeline, but Evangeline kind of thinks that he's just like a playboy and doesn't trust him type of thing. So she doesn't really give him the time of day. Um, and he wants her to give him the time of day. So he finds out about her little matchmaking scheme and says, "I'll help you out because you're new to town. You don't know all the history here. You didn't realize that you don't want to accidentally matchmake cousins type of
Yeah.
thing. You know, I'll help you out, but in exchange, you have to go on a date with me. You set up these people for a date. You go on a date with me." In the original, he was kind of blackmailing her to go out with him, saying, "Hey, I won't tell people what you're doing, but you have to go out with me," type of thing. And so the editors weren't really so keen on the blackmail part, which I get. And they decided, like, well, why don't we make a bargain type of thing? So that's the biggest change that happened.
They're like, let's not make it quite so nefarious.
Yeah, I was like, well, he was a bad boy.
That's so funny. So, when you're writing, do you write in silence or with music or something going on in the background?
Complete silence. Like I can't have any noises. If there's people at home, I don't write. I even try to write if people are at home. But yeah, no noise, dead silence.
Oh my gosh. I have to have something going on in the background or I feel like I'm missing out. There's something going on and so I have to have something going on because then I know it's happening. But every once in a while I do have to put headphones on and just be like, okay, lock in. But Oh, I can't do it.
See,
How many?
I'll be distracted, like, what's going on? What's going on?
Yeah.
Or if there's a
Whereas,
song, I'll start singing with it. And then the words of the song or whatever are going to take over the words that I'm trying to put on the
yeah,
paper.
yeah. I write to a lot of soundtracks because then you don't have the words. And you can kind of theme the music to the scene that you're writing idea. But yeah, I couldn't study in a library. I'd study in the union. So there was stuff happening, but it was with people I didn't know. So it was not a big distraction.
Yeah. I
But
either write at home by myself or I can write in a library, but a library is quiet.
yeah,
And
whereas I write at Panera. So that again, there's activity around me kind of thing. So isn't that funny? How many hours a day do you write when you're on deadline?
um, my brain will only focus probably no more than 3, but it's usually, let's see, yeah, 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
A very focused time, like, so I usually get around anywhere between 1,000 to 1,500 words a day, and then
Yeah.
probably about 5,000 words a week and around 20,000 words a month.
Yeah. But you've got, you know what your pace is and you know what your timing is. And so you're like, okay, this
I'm
is what
not
I
very
could do.
fast, and I can't do long sprints.
Yeah. I can do a couple of those when I'm like really under deadline. I can do a couple like 8,000 word sprints when life has been insane. But
Yeah.
those are exhausting. Those are
I,
just like,
Also, probably because I am a pantser, so I don't have the plot going. So usually I only know like
yeah.
what the next chapter is.
Yeah. You're like, I know the next scene. I know the next little bit.
Exactly. Like, and sometimes I'll be like, I'll reach a point and I just don't know what happens next. I'm like, all right, time to go take a shower or walk the
Yeah.
dog or something that,
Let the subconscious work.
yeah, or sometimes it will take a couple of days before I figure out, okay, like, usually I know kind of the overarching, like, oh, how it will like sort of endish, but
Yeah.
getting there, it's always a journey.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's so funny. Everyone's so different. It's always interesting to see how, even with pantsers, it's so different. Because some will be like, I know the beginning, I know the midpoint, and then I may not know how it ends, or I know the beginning and the end, and I don't know how I'm going to get between the two. And it's always interesting to see how people do it.
That kind of changes per book too for me, because sometimes I'll only know the first scene and I'll just start writing that first scene and see what happens. I won't even really know the characters all that well until they like present themselves on the page, and then kind of go from there. Other times I'll have like the general idea of the book, this one I had the general idea of the book. Like, I knew she was going to have alopecia, and I knew like what her hurts were, her wounds, and I knew Ty and how he was going to help her out in the conclusion. And a lot of that I knew because I put a lot of my mom's personal journey in there. But always the getting there part is not. And sometimes I'll pause and be like, this has been a little bit heavy. This is a rom-com. It's time for something funny to happen,
Yeah.
like, we need to add
Time
some.
to like let people breathe and go, oh, that's fun.
Yeah, exactly. Hit the genre expectations.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, the pacing is always when we read and write in a genre long enough, you get to where you're like, okay, now it's time for this. And you just kind of know internally that, okay, it's time for this to happen. And so that makes it kind of fun. So when you're writing, do you drink tea, coffee, or water, or something completely different?
Nothing.
Nothing?
No, I don't eat and I don't drink, but it's only 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah,
So
you are locked and
yeah,
loaded. I
yeah.
love it. And then do you celebrate? How do you celebrate when you're done?
Um,
Like when the book's turned in, how do you celebrate?
Sometimes we'll go out to eat, or we'll just have like ice cream after dinner or something like that. Or I'll just be like, I'm done.
Yeah, on to the next.
Yeah,
We have got to get better at celebrating. Some people are really good at it, but most of us are just like, okay, another day at the office. Next.
yeah, exactly.
That's so funny. So the book is an overdue match, and it when tell readers when it comes out and how they can learn more about you and the book.
Yeah, so it comes out February 18th, so in just a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And you can find out more about me, more about my book on my website, which is sarahmonzonwrites.com. I'm also on social media, Instagram, Facebook, things like that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And this book is so much fun, and I just really enjoyed it. And I love that it's a love story to books. I just loved it. So, so good. So, thank you so much for joining me today. This was a lot of fun, and I think readers are really going to enjoy the romance between Evangeline and Ty, but then also just her whole journey. It was a really sweet one.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me too.